I'm going to finish this and it's just going to be, I am no man. And it is just going to be so epic. Hello and welcome to The Thread. This is a podcast about my journey to becoming a bona fide knitwear designer, all the things that happen to be knitting on the side, and whatever other nerdy tangent I may or may not feel like skipping down this week. My name is Nicole. I'm the nerdy knitwear designer behind Common Thread Fiber, which is how you can find me on all the socials. I'll put them in the down bar. And today we're going to do a WIP audit. Now, don't get me wrong, these are not all my works in progress. These are just the ones that have been living in my head rent-free for the last way more months than I'm willing to admit to in public. So we're going to talk about them, ranging from the bane of my existence to my angel project where everything always goes right to the brand spanking new dude on the scene. So if that all sounds good to you, then we're going to get right into it. And we're going to start with my Balrog, with my Witch King of Angmar, which with my... It's the bane of my existence. It's my I am no man design. So for new viewers, first of all, welcome. Super glad you're here. I don't know if you've got the hint in the last 5 seconds, but I'm a huge Tolkien nerd. So far, all of my current designs are inspired by the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. So this particular pattern, this is my design. It is in progress. It is called I Am No Man. It is based on that glorious girl power moment in The Return of the King where Éowyn absolutely and utterly murks the Witch King of Angmar with the glorious line, I am no man. So this has been a saga, and the saga continues. So the last time we talked about this, I was having an existential crisis because of how many times I've had to rip this thing out. Well, I had to rip it out again. So, guys, I promise I knit things. I swear I knit things. I don't just knit them and then rip them out. I design, I promise. And I knit them and they never turn out right. So I have to rip them out a whole lot. So here's what happened. The last time I talked to you about this design, we were talking about the fact that there was a mistake in my grading spreadsheet, which drives me insane because that's just a really dumb mistake to have. And there's mistakes and then there's mistakes. And this one was a mistake. But it was fine. I caught my chill, I ripped it out, and I reknit the yoke in 3 days again. So the last time, I had also reknit the yoke in 3 days. This was, again, I reknit it in 3 days. Got to the point where I was going to join the V-neck, and I found a problem. So I ripped it out, and I'm going to explain what the problem was. So here it is in its current state. As you can see, it is nowhere close to being done. So we are about halfway through the yoke this time, but let me explain what went wrong. I think I can do this just showing you this way. If I can't, I'll pop a picture in. But here we go. So this will be a compound-shaped V-neck raglan when it finally grows up. And you kind of see, sort of, oh Lord, there we go. So we have cables on the V-neck. That's these guys. And can you kind of see how the cables are turning into each other, right? That's important. So when I design things, I do so with intention. The intention may not always be immediately clear to me, but I don't just throw things in willy-nilly to see what's going to stick and what won't. With this design, I knew that I wanted I wanted cables on the V-neck and I wanted it to come to a point. I have previously tried crossing the cables over each other. It felt very bulky. It's a pretty deep V. It comes to about here. So having that kind of bulk right there was not ideal. So I didn't want to cross them over each other, even though that was my original idea. So I thought, I know, they turn into each other, right? So they'll come to a point. So here's what I'll do. It's a 2/3 cable. So you have 2 stitches twisting over 3, and the 2 are what you're seeing in the front. So I'll take the 3 on the bottom right after we twist, and I'll seed stitch those out, and then knit across the 2 that have come to a point and seed stitch the last 3, and voila, you're done. It comes to a point. It is, if I say so myself, a pretty elegant solution, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure 5 years from now, Nicole will take a look at that design and be like, oh honey, you could have done it this way. But I'm not 5 years from now, Nicole, yet I'm current Nicole, and this is the idea that I have, and I think it's a pretty good one. So, the cables twisting into themselves is pretty essential, right? Well, you ever have those moments where you get really amped up and you're revved up, you're ready to go, and you're just like, do it. I was like that. So I tore it out, right? From the grading sheet mistake. I tore it out, cast it on, and was just, I did not, I did not go to the market. I did not go to the store. I did not go to the city. I went to town. I went to town on this thing. And in 3 days, yet again, knit the entire yoke just to get to the point in the V to realize the cables were twisting out, not in. So kind of like the dog in the house on fire, like, this is fine. Like, the dog I'm talking about. I mean, I thought to myself, okay, fine. We'll twist the cables over each other. We'll do something else. No, there was nothing else to be done. I tried twisting them over each other. It didn't work. I ripped it out. And when I say I ripped it out, I mean, I laddered down the cables, tried to fix them this way. It made no sense because all the cables along this section were going one way and then the cables on just down here went the other way. It didn't look right. So I had yet another existential crisis and I ripped it out. So I think this is number 6 attempt? 7? I don't know, but a commenter, a lovely viewer, pointed out once that I like to describe designing kind of like playing Elden Ring. So if you've ever played Elden Ring, you're gonna die. A lot. You're gonna lose runes. Elden Ring is emotional damage of the highest order. So that is kind of what designing this has been like. I mean, there is a certain extent to which when you are designing your own thing, whether you're a professional designer or not, you gotta expect to rip out, right? This is getting ridiculous. So, but instead of focusing on all that negative, right? First of all, I am now learning 7 different ways to not make a seed stitch cabled raglan. There's that. And also, it has given me a lot of time to really work on the instructions and really be very intentional about how I want to actually format this pattern so that hopefully it will be as user-friendly as humanly possible. So at the very least, by the time it gets to you good people, we will know that everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. That's how I'm trying to frame it to myself, and it's okay. But it's also just that I love the inspiration for this design, right? AON is one of my favorites. And how this particular design came to be, to me, it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite stories. I actually started my design career. It feels really weird to call it a career because I only have 2 published designs, but my very first design came from Rohan 2. It was my Golden Hall shawl. And that shawl was based on King Theoden. And I very much wanted to feel like I was wearing armor. And the shawl did it for me, but I needed more. And that's where the Golden Hall tee was born, which I'll pop in a picture of the Golden Hall tee. It's going to look very familiar to you because it is essentially proto I Am No Man. So the thing with that design is it didn't quite work. There was things about it that just didn't jive. It was a classic raglan, which means that it just increased every other row. That is not going to work for the majority of body types. You're going to get a completely different look if you're doing it like a classic raglan. So that didn't sit well with me. It was also cotton, which I love cotton, but I live in Florida, so of course I love cotton. The majority of people would probably not knit this design out of cotton. And then I had the idea of putting that huge cable on my Golden Hall shawl at the bottom of this tee. And that didn't sit well with me either. There's something about that going around a cardigan, at the bottom of a cardigan makes sense because it's open front. But for me, a pullover, unless you're going to have a slit down the front, which is a thing you could do, it just didn't sit right. And so I put that design to the side and ended up going to Britta of Baby Cat Yarns. If you have watched this podcast more than once, you will have heard me wax poetic about Britta. I went to her just curious if she would ever design non-superwash yarn. If she would ever dye non-superwash yarn. And Britta being Britta, she ran with it. I assume she already had a plan to get started and she was just looking for that excuse. And there I was. So Britta went nuts in the best way humanly possible. She got so many non-superwash bases, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, well now I need a design. That's when I realized the Golden Hall tee was never meant to be the Golden Hall tee. It was always meant to be Éowyn's armor. And I realized that by going through my design notebook, and there in the margins of the Golden Hall tee design was written, I am no man. This was always meant to be Éowyn. And so I love that. And I love that it came to fruition because of a collaboration with someone who I really admire. I mean, come on, y'all. Look at this color. So I'll pop in a picture of the inspiration that I sent Britta. So I sent her photos of my Golden Hall tee, and then I sent her some photos of Éowyn and Éowyn's armor. Britta freaking nailed it. She nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. I could not have asked for this color. I wouldn't have even known what this color was. But she saw the inspiration. She really understood what I was getting at. And we talked about doing an entire palette, what the palette name would be, and she just freaking nailed it, guys. So I love this design. And because of that, I am not going to try to knit the entire yoke in 3 days again. So this has been the work of probably about a week, and I'm halfway done with the yoke. And I'm okay with that. Like, knitting is slow fashion. Slow fashion is slow for a reason. So, and no, it's not so that you love your clothes a lot, but it also is so that you appreciate what you have, right? You appreciate because you understand the work that goes into it. So I'm not putting this down by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, I'm halfway done with the yoke. But it is giving me an opportunity to play with bust darts. So I do think this pattern will have bust darts. And it's giving me an opportunity to appreciate my pattern idea for what it is. I'm actually getting to knit from my own instructions for a change. And it also means that I'm able to make edits that way. So I'm going slower and I'm enjoying it much more. So Éowyn is out of the House of Healing. She's ready to go. And we're just going to plug along at a healthy pace for a change instead of me trying to Gimli energy myself across. Like, we are currently in the Mines of Moria and nobody tosses a dwarf except someone toss me. Like, you gotta toss me if I gotta get there that quickly. So I'm trying to chill myself out. And it's going good. So there's proof of life for I Am No Man. And while we're on the subject of the yarn for I Am No Man and the palette that I Am No Man will be coming from, so that is Britta from Baby Cat Yarns. That is her DK weight organic non-superwash yarn. That is the leather colorway, which does not exist in her shop yet because it is part of a palette that she will be launching when I call for testers for this design, which is yet another reason that this needs to get done faster in my brain because this palette is incredible. I have shared it before. I'm going to share it again. Britta was a gem of a human being. She wanted to test dyeing these colors out on her superwash bases as well to make sure that they worked. So she dyed them on minis and she sent it to me. So here they are. Guys, oh my, I can't get over it. Every time I look at this palette, I just get all kinds of good energy. I don't know why. I do know why, because look at the colors. They're incredible. So this is the color that I'm using for I Am No Man. This is leather. So coming from this direction over, we have tourmaline, leather, cadmium, little orange boy. That's this orange one, little orange boy. Austin is the gold. Olive branch, Mediterranean blue, and Payne's gray. So these colors are all based on I believe, Renaissance paintings, Flemish Renaissance paintings, I believe. Britta, if you're watching this and that's not entirely correct me in the comments, please. But it's just so good. And when I say the word heroic, hell yeah, that's right. Like, she just nailed it, guys. So that is I Am No Man. That is one of my WIPs that has been living in my head rent-free for months, guys, months now. And I know that, like, yeah, there's been some dips and some trials and tribulations with this one, but it's going to mean that much more to me when it's done. And I hope you guys feel that way about it too when it's out in the world, because I don't know, it really feels like I'm crafting my own armor here. And that moment, murking the Witch King, it's just, I'm going to finish this and it's just going to be I Am No Man. And it is just going to be so epic. And I hope you guys are with me on that. So that is my I Am No Man design. It's by me, inspired by Éowyn, and call for testers is going to come when it's going to come. Like, we're getting there. Again. So let's move on to my next WIP. Do we want to do the Angel Project where nothing ever goes wrong, or the brand new dude on the scene? let's do the brand new dude on the scene, shall we? So, what happened with I Am No Man, right? It's a lot of ripping out and a lot of frustration, which led to a really deep creative funk for me. And we talked about it on the last big podcast episode. So not the last tangent, but the last podcast update. And we kind of talked about what I was planning on trying to do to get myself out of that funk. So what was I going to do then? Honestly, I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it happened, but I got just smacked in the face with colorwork inspiration. And my last tangent episode, we talked about socks, right? And I alluded to a new sock pattern idea that I have inspired by Smaug. Well, here's the thing. I want to use Britta's yarn for those socks because I know her bases, they are beautiful. Her superwash bases in particular are incredible. I mean, all of her bases are blow your mind, but I'm not going to use a non-superwash base for these socks. But I knew I wanted to use her bases, and Britta had the audacity to go on vacation. So again, I said that in my last episode. I'm definitely kidding. That woman needed to be on a beach. So I was waiting for her to get home for me to slide into her DMs and be like, what colors? Here's my inspiration. Don't create a color, but which ones in your shop do you already have? So the socks weren't going to immediately happen, but what did immediately happen was a hat. I've been having so much fun with this, guys. So may I introduce to you the newest member of the Common Thread family, the chiefest of calamities, a hat inspired by Smaug. So there he is. I'm in love. So this pattern, this stitch pattern, is inspired by the scales and eyes of Smaug, the dragon from The Hobbit, if anybody doesn't know. And I have just been going to town on this. I love it. I'm having so much fun with this. I totally forgot how much I love color work. And I know I kind of talked about it a little bit in the last tangent episode, but color work was my first love. It was my first more advanced technique that I fell in love with as a knitter. I didn't really start knitting cables until I started designing. I don't know what happened, but I started designing and all of a sudden I spoke cables. It was a little nuts. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. But color work was my very first, my first love. There's no other way to put it. So this hat is going to be a beanie. This one is going to be a straight up negative ease, fit your head closely beanie. And I'm in love with this stitch pattern. It's only an 8-stitch repeat and there's no long floats. The longest float you have is 3 stitches, which is not a float you have to catch. And it's potato chip knitting, guys. I can't wax poetic enough. I know it's my own design, so like I don't mean to be getting gross about it, but at the same time, why is it gross to appreciate something that you've made yourself? I hope you guys do that for yourselves. I hope you see things that you put into the world, no matter what it may be, and think, wow, damn, I created beauty, because I'm sure you do. Like, I hope you do that. And if not, let me do it for you. So send me pictures of what you make. Drop in the comments poems you write. Let me tell you how much beauty you put into the world if you're not doing it for yourself. But this is mine currently. I can't stop looking at it. So let's talk about the yarn. The orange is Campfire and the gray is Gray Skull from Blackbird's Sycamore yarn. I know, someone other than baby cat yarn. Shocking. But I'm loving using this. This is superwash merino, 100% superwash merino. It is a DK weight. This yarn is not slippery. This is merino, but it is not slippery like other superwash merinos I have used. I would definitely call it soft, but it's not butter, if that makes sense. And I'm saying that in a good way because knitting color work with it has been an absolute joy. I was concerned about knitting color work with a superwash yarn. I've done it before. It did not go well. I've done it multiple times before, and it has never gone well, which again, your mileage may vary, but for me personally, it never goes well. But I thought, you know what? I've admired Stephanie's yarn for a while, and I am going to knit a hat, and I need superwash, so I'm gonna go try Stephanie's yarn, and I'm really happy that I did. So It's absolutely beautiful. The colors are intense and really deep. She does a really great job. And I don't know what base she's using, where she's getting it from, but it's very unique to me. And I very much appreciate it. I appreciate how even though it is superwash, it's still grippy. And I love that. I can't get over how much I love that. So this is Campfire and Gray Skull from Blackbird Sycamore Yarns. Stephanie is the dyer behind Blackbird Sycamore, and I'm loving working with this yarn. So her yarn is what I'm using for the hat. Baby cat yarn will be used for the socks. I am going to create socks out of these. My plan is to take this color work, all of this color work, do a top-down mid-calf sock, and have the color work from the bottom of the cuff all the way down to where you start the heel flap and gusset. That way, I was thinking about doing an overall colorwork sock originally, but a couple of things happened. Number one, I have to be able to admit my own limitations. I'm not a sock knitter. So how am I going to design an overall colorwork sock when I've never knit one? Number two was that I know some people, a good number of people, have sensory issues, particularly with their feet. So the idea of having a lot of long floats, which there are no long floats, but having any floats at all whatsoever on the bottom of your foot, even makes me like itchy. And I don't have sensory issues like that. I thought about doing it like as a checkerboard on the bottom, but I thought, you know what? This is too much. Do it the way I originally thought, which was having the color work only on the leg. And that way you could do a contrast heel and a contrast toe. I mean, maybe I'll take one of these guys, right, and put them around the toe. I could always do that. But I don't want to be doing color work on the entire foot itself. And I just came to that conclusion based on what I feel I could reliably create in a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Something that I could create well, not something that it's like first draft, first attempt, here you go. Like I've knit colorwork socks before, the ones that have it just on the cuff. And so that's what we're going to do. And I think it'll also be maybe more accessible knit for some people. I don't know. Tell me in the comments, do you like overall colorwork socks? It's not going to change how I design these socks, but I'm just curious. Out of everybody who watches this podcast, who loves overall colorwork socks versus some color work on the leg and some maybe just around the toe? I've seen that too, which I think looks really cool. So that is my Smaug inspired hat, which I have named the Chiefest of Calamities, because that's what Bilbo calls Smaug, the greatest and chiefest of calamities. I was going to call it the Great Calamity, and then I realized that's Ganon. So, like, wrong fandom. That's Zelda. No, wrong fandom. The Great Calamity is Ganon. Ganon or Ganondorf? I can never really tell what the difference is. Ganon's his human form, right? And then Ganondorf is his, like, you know, that thing that's circling Hyrule Castle at Breath of the Wild, right? Am I right? Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody please. We're going to talk about one more WIP, and then we're going to talk about an acquisition. So, the other WIP is my Angel project. It's the project that has never gone wrong. I've knit it 1,000 times. I love it so much. It's my hat for Thorin. So this pattern it's available. I published it over Easter like an idiot. It didn't occur to me that it was Easter. I don't know. I do know what I was going through. My mother's health issue happened right then. And so I published this design while on the road to Indiana. So I know why it didn't occur to me that it was Easter. But this is a published design. It is based on the one, the only Thorin Oakenshield, his armor. I also have a shawl design that will be coming out. Testing is done. The pattern is written. I'm just trying to decide, you know, the timing of it, which has the same cables. But here it is. This is one repeat of the cables is done, which let me actually turn it this way. There you go. So I call these my rupee cables because I'm a Zelda fanatic too. Like I'm talking rupees like Zelda rupees, because that's what they remind me of. But it is inspired by the armor and story of Thorin Oakenshield, his story of redemption, of taking back Erebor, and he is also one of my favorites. So we got Eowyn, Gimli. Gimli is my homeboy. Thorin, I am hot for Thorin. Like that's so there is a viewer and member of the thread. Bobby, if you are out there, please like give me proof of life, Bobby. It's been a minute since I heard from you, girl. But Bobby jokingly said that I should name my King Under the Mountain shawl, which is upcoming, Hot for Thorin. And it has become like our password into Moria. Speak hot for Thorin and enter. Like I put out a call for testers for this, and in it I put, is there anything that you would like me to know that has not already been asked? And the number of people that I got hashtag hot for Thorin from. I love you all so much. Like you are my people. It made my life. It was just so funny. Or I got hot for Thorin for life or stuff like that. So I am hot for Thorin. So that is why this is called Hat for Thorin. Anyway, I am making this for a friend, a dear friend who deserves a hat. And I can't say too much because I think she watches this podcast. So I don't want to say too much about why she deserves this hat, but she absolutely does. And this color blue, I'm just going to tell you about the yarn because I swear, guys, if I say too much, she'll be sitting there being like, that's for me. So here's the yarn. It's baby cat yarn, like shocker. So here it is. This is her sport weight superwash base. Oh no, I think it's called Breakwater. If it's not called Breakwater, I'll put the name here. But it's glorious, like everything else that Britta dyes. It's fantastic. So I've knit, let's see, 1, 2, 3. This is my 4th hat for Thorin. My first hat for Thorin was knit out of Baby Cat yarns in her Thunder Snow colorway, which was left over from my King Under the Mountain shawl, which I'll pop a picture in here of the shawl so you can see the color. And I'll also pop a picture in of the finished hats so you can see them. So the first one was knit out of Thunder Snow, which is the same yarn that I knit my King Under the Mountain shawl out of. The second one was knit out of Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, which is a sport weight. That was a non-superwash yarn. I wanted to see how this hat would behave in a non-superwash yarn. And the picture that I'll put in will have me, and I'll be wearing a superwash version, and Dan is wearing, my husband, is wearing a non-superwash version. You can see they do behave differently, but not necessarily in a bad way. And the third version that I knit was the one that I finally knit for myself, because the version I knit out of the Thunder Snow colorway I knit for my mother for Christmas. That's how Hat for Thorin came into existence. I just wanted to knit her a hat for Christmas. So Thunder Snow is for Mom. Knit Picks Wool of the Andes ended up being Dan's, and then Genovian Pear ended up being mine. And that glorious green, I mean, can you blame me? So it is very much a Nicole color. I absolutely love that color. I need an entire sweater out of Genovian Pear, guys. I'm not joking. I love that color. It's so 70s to me. I don't know why. Anyway, and also just to be clear, I am not sponsored by Baby Cat Yarns. I am just a huge fangirl. So when you meet people who are like-minded in so many ways, appreciate your friends and the people in your life for what they are. And Britta is a color wizard, fantastic human being, and that's why I talk her up so much. Her yarn is beautiful, and she is beautiful herself. So I am not sponsored by any stretch of the imagination. So this is Hat for Thorin, though, in her Breakwater colorway. It has been languishing a little bit as I continually rip out and reknit. I'm a man, but these hats knit up real quick. So I know that, if I just decide to put some energy into it, it'll get done very quickly. I mean, this chiefest of calamities, this is a day's work right here for me. I know for a lot of people, socks are your palette cleanser projects. For me, it's hats. And I think it's the same concept as socks. It's just I have a wrist injury that can make sock knitting a little difficult. But what I'm going to do, we're going to move on to a little bit of a ramble, and then we'll talk about an acquisition, and then I will let you guys have a great weekend. But a little bit of a ramble. From the tangent from last week, that sock episode, essentially, you guys gave me some great feedback. Thank you so much to everybody who commented on that with your favorite heel type or a favorite sock pattern or any kind of advice for someone who is not a sock knitter but aspires to, at the very least, not hate knitting socks. Thank you so much. And the one piece of advice that I really, really got stuck in the gears in my brain is knit 2 at a time. So the first time I ever knit socks, I did magic loop and I found it very finicky and drove me nuts. But I'm not the same knitter I was then by any stretch of the imagination. And the idea that by using magic loop, I could also knit 2 at a time would take care of a lot of problems. It would take care of my second sock syndrome. I always get second sock syndrome. I can knit 4 hats for Thorin, but I can't knit a second sock. What is wrong with me? I don't know. No diagnosis has been given other than I'm not a sock knitter. I don't know. But that would take care of that. It would also take care of the issue that I have with the shorty needles, which I really do. I love the 9-inch circulars because then I can just go. But with my wrist injury, that hurts a lot, especially when I'm knitting socks for me, which, as I said in that tangent, I have little doll feet, as my sister likes to say. So it's a really small circumference when you're knitting something for an adult. So, it would take care of that. And I've heard it can be finicky, but I feel like a lot of things are finicky if you never practice enough for them to not be. And then some things are just always going to be finicky because that's what they are. But if you know that going in, then maybe, I don't know. I'm going to try. I'm going to try knitting some socks 2 at a time, magic looping it. And I will share it with you when I actually get around to doing that. But that piece of advice, to the viewers who gave me that piece of advice, thank you. That was just ideal advice, y'all. I really appreciate it. And this is why I love when you guys comment. I read all of those comments. Even if I don't reply to every single one, I read them all. And I really do value your feedback. So I'm super excited to give that a shot because I think it will have the same effect as knitting a hat, right? Because, yeah, the circumference of what you're knitting is small, but you're knitting it magic loop. I can see how it will translate. It will not end my love of hats, though. I just love hats. I also feel like as a designer, hats are a really fun place to test out new ideas. Because if you don't think that this is turning into a sweater, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. I mean, for God's sake, this is turning into a sweater. Just not yet. But it is. I have so many design ideas right now, guys, and I have absolutely no energy to make any of them happen. Because I need to go home and just dissolve in the ocean for a minute. I know I've said that on another tangent before. I've been in Indiana for 2 months now. It has been 83 years since I've seen the ocean. That's how it feels. And I need my ocean back. So I'm sure once I get home and I hear those waves and I feel the warm sand on my feet, I feel like I will feel better. And I will say that for that creative slump that I was in, doing something completely different was exactly what I needed. And I did talk about in one of the podcast episodes where we talked about how I'm dealing with a slump. I did talk about how sometimes doing something completely different is what you need. And for me, it wasn't trying to do watercolors. It wasn't trying to do something completely different outside of the realm of knitting. It was doing something in knitting that was completely different from what I'd been doing. And so the color work gave me the stockinette, kind of the stockinette meditation, I think that a lot of us feel like it is, but keeping my interest with the color work. And it wasn't a huge color work pattern, so I could memorize it. It was very intuitive. And it was perfect. And it was like I was excited about what I was doing for the first time in a while. So if you are in a creative slump, do something different. It doesn't have to be on the project that's causing your slump. It could be pick up an old WIP. It could be cast on something completely new, or it could be go and do something completely different outside of knitting or crochet at all. Maybe it's get a coloring book. Maybe it's try some watercolors. Maybe it's take your phone outside and just go try to take some photos, get fancy with it. There's a lot of photography free, tutorials on YouTube. There's a lot of things you could do, but if you're in a creative slump, let me be the first to tell you that trying to force whatever is creating that slump will not help. Try to do something different, because knitting, the chiefest of calamities, has now got me knitting I Am No Man again. So anyway, I'm getting off my podium with that. And we're going to talk about one more thing. So the way that I tend to design is utter and absolute chaos. Like, I'm not even going to pretend that there's a method to my madness. There's not. There's just not. But usually I come up with the design idea and then I get the yarn. So as you can see behind me, there's a lot of yarn because I've been having a lot of design ideas. But the one that I really want to talk about is how sometimes, every so often, a yarn comes along and it predates any design idea. And this is one of those yarns. I know who I will be designing this based off of, but I don't know what it will look like. I have a rough idea, but it is not right. It is not right yet. And I'm not ready to share about it because she's still percolating. But this will be the yarn when I am finally ready to design Arwen. Here she is. I love it. I love it. But it's the silveriness of this yarn that really got it for me. It really hits right for Arwen for me. Now, this is from Color Me Happy Fiber Arts Studio. They are located in Indiana, and they are a natural dye studio. And they are so freaking cool. I got to go to their studio. I went with Trish of Fiber Optic Knits. She introduced me to Color Me Happy. And thank you so much, Trish. I don't think Trish watches podcasts, but if you are watching, Trish, thank you very much. And I didn't even walk in. I pulled up to their studio and I got out and thought, if I could live here, I would. It's this white, old, like 1930s cottage that's on this plot of land that is completely covered by trees. It's got a creek like further in the distance. I think they're planning on growing their own dye plants if they don't already. I think they do. And it was just such a beautiful space. And then to walk in and know that these women are dyeing their yarn naturally and they're sourcing their bases. I believe that they are sourcing them locally or as local as they can be. And so I just think that's amazing. It's one of my favorites. Kind of like Emily of Woolen Palette is one of my favorites. Color Me Happy just jumped up there along with her. And it's just so beautiful. So this is their flaxen base, which is 50% baby alpaca, 25% linen, and 25% silk. And it feels like mithril. That's what it feels like. It feels like liquid in the best way possible. And the colorway is called Silver Ore. And it's so pretty. I love this yarn. So you can follow them on Instagram at Color Me Happy. I believe that's their Instagram. I will put all that information in the description, but they do ship, and I am not sponsored. I bought this yarn with my own money. This was not gifted. So just so you guys know, I'm not blowing smoke. That's why I share that. And I can't get over it, and I had to share it with you guys because the fact that this came from plants makes me really happy. I believe it's cochineal that they used. I can't stop looking at it. I have the idea, guys. It's not ready. I know it's not ready. Kind of like I knew when that 70s Hobbit wasn't ready, but it's ready now. You're not ready though, so I'm not ready to share it with you guys, but it's ready. And yeah, anyway, we're going to end there. So I hope you guys are having a great weekend. I hope you continue to have a great weekend. And if you're, like I said, if you're in a creative slump, do something different. And I hope you recognize, even when you're in a slump, the beauty you put into the world, whether it be through your knitting, whether it be through something other creative endeavor that you partake in, or if it's just in the way you have conversations with your friends. I really hope that you understand that, like, you put so much awesomeness into the world. And I hope that you remind yourself of that every day. And if you don't, let me do it for you. Okay? Have a really great weekend. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.